Hi, and welcome to Talk Digital to Me, where I explore the latest trends and topics in digital, tech, AI, and online media. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the different ways many people fall into the tech world and how that path isn't usually the path you would expect. We are going to dive into how you can utilize online resources and social media to get into tech, and also a bit about my background and how I fell into my role, and why I decided to do this podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Martin, and this is Episode 1, Perseverance, Patience, and Practice. So I chose this as my first episode because I think it's really important to talk about the different ways that people end up in tech fields, because I happen to be one of those people. I actually started as a journalist, getting not 1, but 2 degrees in journalism because I thought, hey, what better way to spend my money than to go to grad school and get the same degree? But we live and we learn, and we pay for it. So backing up a bit, while I was at undergrad at Penn State, I really couldn't afford to go anywhere to get an unpaid internship in journalism, specifically magazine journalism, which is out of New York City. So I decided to start reaching out to everywhere I could online and begging them to let me work remotely. And this was back before BuzzFeed and before most magazines decided to go digital. I did convince a couple places to hire me as an intern, and one actually was FabFitFun, back before what they are today. They were actually a blog, and I was their first ever remote editorial intern. So that was my first really big jump into the digital world. I was writing tweets, blog articles, sharing everything I wrote for places on social, and reaching out to interview people online. After a while, I decided to launch my own magazine, called L7 Women's Magazine. Love, lust, listen, learn, lead, live, and look. Honestly, I've said that so many times, it might as well be tattooed on my brain. Anyways, I spent months spreading the word and getting the word out that I needed unpaid interns to be writers for the magazine and gain experience. Well, I did at least convince Penn State to let me give them college credit if they interned for the whole semester, which was pretty cool of them, so kudos to you, Penn State. After hiring 52 interns and getting everything ready to launch, my web developer dropped in the middle of the project, leaving me high and dry with 2 weeks to spare until launch. So I did what any sane person would do, and I decided to teach myself how to build a website, including some HTML coding, in 2 weeks. Surprisingly enough, I actually pulled it off. I managed on 3 hours of sleep that whole 2 weeks, many phone calls overseas at all hours with developer help for JavaScript, and many, many Google searches, which most coders will tell you is a lot of the job. And I launched the site. And that was the start of my love affair with digital and tech. This goes to show that there's no right path into tech. And you'll see this in many of my episodes that there really isn't a clear path to how people get into STEM. So many things now tie into the tech world that many people in creative careers end up crossing into the technical stuff, even when they never considered themselves quote-unquote techie, like myself. There are so many ways you can get into the field by using online resources, reaching out to people, or if you can't sleep, you can make 3 a.m. calls to India, like I did. Point is, tech is everywhere, and there's so many things that tie into it, and that's why I decided to start this podcast. I love learning about new trends and innovation going on in tech, AI, and digital, but I also love hearing stories from the people who are in the field. Which leads me to this episode's expert, in going from one field to another and how she utilized online resources to learn to code and follow her path to be a web developer, and now how she's using social media to build her brand online in her tech career. Stay tuned. I am here with Brandy Morgan. Brandy is a developer, designer, and doer who could out-hustle Jay-Z. Her work has received recognition and acclaim from awards Brandy has been featured in Glamour, Money Magazine for her work on social media for paving the way for other female developers. If she isn't coding or creating content, you can find her running laps around the beautiful lakes of Winter Park, Florida, or sipping espresso at local coffee shops. So thank you for being with us, Brandy.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So tell me a little bit about your background in coding and tech and how you got into that.
Yeah, of course. I actually started off in marketing in a software development shop, like mobile development shop in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I started running this large mobile conference that they had. So it was myself and one other lady, and her and I basically did everything, all the logistics, all the marketing, all the sales. The only thing that we didn't do was actually build the mobile application itself. Mm-hmm. And that was my first introduction into programming, is because we had a website. It was done in WordPress, and I didn't build it, but I wanted to understand like how it worked. I was very curious. And so I became close with the guy who had built it. And so he let me play around with it. And that was my first introduction to, coding. And I just started teaching myself. I did everything from, those free code camp. Code Academy was the first thing I started. They offer, free kind of like learning platform where you go on and you write some code. They tell you if it's right or if it's wrong. And it's pretty awesome. And so that was like my first introduction. And then that kind of, like I said, gave me a taste. And I decided, based on my personality type, that I would need to be fully immersed.
Yeah.
So I started looking at schools that actually taught programming, not necessarily computer science degrees. And I found a school down in Florida called Full Sail University.
Yeah. And
I was like, yep, let's go. And so pretty much in like a matter of like 2 weeks, I, submitted, got accepted. And then I was like, okay, I'm moving. And
wow.
So, yeah.
That's so quite a career change.
I know. So I pretty much sold everything, because not everything was going to fit in my car, because I had to drive, about 1,500 miles across country, and did that. Went to Full Sail, and I absolutely loved it. It was probably like the best decision I made. It's a great school because they actually teach you the skill of programming and like the concepts that you take into a job where you're programming. That's not just theory.
Yeah.
And so that's basically got me into programming. I got an internship about 9 months in to the program, and ended up working there while I was in school, and then working full time after I graduated there for a while.
That's, that's quite a risk to take. I mean, were you scared?
I think it did hit me until I was driving and I saw the sign that says "You are now leaving Minnesota." And I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like, there's no going back at this point.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. I mean, that's something that a lot of people, never get, the courage to do. So that's fantastic. And, I always encourage people, if, that's what they want to go after, take those risks, but it's scary, but, that's a really great story that I hope people like really, take into account, and like, okay, maybe I could do this. Like, she did it.
Exactly. It's all about taking calculated risks. If you know that you have the ability to go back to school full time, and you have the means to do so, and that's what your personality type is, then I'm all about it. If you're the type of person that can teach yourself, that's how my husband is, that's how he learned, then, definitely do that route, save the money, soak up all the content that's available online. I mean, there's so much of it.
Yeah, that Code Academy is really great. If you don't have the ability to go to school, or you quit the job, don't have those, chances to take. Those are really good, programs out there. There's a lot of Udemy courses, stuff like that. So that's fantastic. So what do you love the most about your job?
Well, my job has changed a lot over the past couple of years. So after I graduated, I was working in programming jobs. And then I went off and worked at a startup where I was just doing full dev work, super intense, like intense
Yeah.
hours. Because going from, depending on where you're working, but startups are definitely intense. And
They
you're
have a lot
pretty
to
much
prove,
just
so
in.
there's a lot of long hours there.
And I'm all about that. I think it's a great way to get really good at a particular skill. So I did that for a while. And then my husband, he decided to quit. We're actually working at the same startup. And he quit and started his own thing. And then about, 9 months to a year. No. Yeah, what was it? Yeah, about 9 months later, I, had finished what I was building there, and I decided to quit and join him at his company. And then as of, a few months ago, I sort of quit doing that, and now I'm in my own thing, which is basically just, trying to build out this brand, Brandy Morgan, and also a couple other brands on the side that I've been doing for a while now.
What are those other brands that you're trying to, I've seen your Instagram, you've got quite a following. And, I think it's really good because it really encourages women to get into tech. And I love to see that. What other things are you working on?
So I'm not going to actually say the names of them. I would rather not be the face associated with them. But they're all in the realm of tech. And my main goal and objective is to not even get more people, but to get people to understand the concepts of technology without having to be a programmer. I think there's like a missing gap when it comes to marketing and sales professionals that are at these tech companies specifically that may not actually know some of the concepts that will actually help them better sell it to people, especially if they're dealing with CTOs or development teams. If they're development products or developer focused products, they need to have a wider knowledge of the underlying technology to better sell it, to understand what the actual selling points are.
I think that's a great idea. I think there can sometimes be a lot of disconnect between sales and just the product in general with across the board. So, especially with something as, different from sales to coding, I can see that. So what are some of the biggest challenges of your job? I mean, do you find it difficult being a woman in tech occasionally?
That's a great question. So when I was first starting off, I was very strategic and picking where I was getting my internship and where I was working. There was this female engineer that I had heard her speak at a meetup, and I just gravitated towards her because she was just a strong woman. And I hadn't really, run into too many female engineers at the time. And so I ended up meeting her there and sort of kind of stalked her online. And she was the one that got me my interview at that company. And so I got to work with her. And that was a great experience because working alongside somebody who not only is a female, but a strong female that knows how to hold her ground and speak respectfully in meetings and stand up for, points that you find that are important, was really helpful because I was new. I was a fresh faced baby coming into this, male dominated industry. And so that was great. And I have had, the bad experiences as well, in the tech world, but it wasn't ever with other programmers. It was always with the actual, the business leaders, if that makes sense. That side of things. And in any case, you always just have to respond. I always say respond respectfully, but always be strong in whatever it is, especially if you feel that a line has been crossed. It's always good to address it to make sure that it doesn't keep happening again. But I always do it in a respectful way because what I've learned is a lot of times they don't realize what they're saying. Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Because it could just be the stigma and, people don't realize what they're saying. And, bringing that to their attention can change the way that they treat others. So that's fantastic.
Especially if because I went and worked with if you work at a place where you're friends with the people, it's not, you don't have that professional relationship yet, but it's supposed to be.
That makes sense.
That's always...
Have you found any benefits to being a woman in tech that, finds there's some things that maybe actually benefit you over, being a male dominated industry?
Oh, for sure. I always use it as my advantage. A lot of times when I was first starting off, one of my big things was I wanted to be